Hi guys, meet me Cindy Himawan. Today I'm going to present about the first topic in ERP, which is Introduction to Enterprise Resource Planning, or in short we will call it ERP. So before I explain about the ERP, I want to explain about the functional area. So usually in the company we'll have some functional area. In example, there is marketing and sales, supply chain management, which will consist of uh, purchasing department, manufacturing, and warehousing, and then there is accounting and finance department, and also human resource. So sometimes it's called as a department, or uh, for the sometimes we also call as an actor. So basically the functional area is the one who will do the business function or business activity. So if you see here, there is a business function which is consists of many process in the inside of the department. In example, for the marketing and sales, in the marketing and sales department, there will be a function from marketing a product, taking note a sales order, doing the customer support, doing the customer relationship management, calculate the sales forecasting, and doing the advertising. So all this business function will be done for inside of the functional area. And then I want to show you again about the business process. I suppose you already know about what is the business process. So the business process here is the collection of activities that consists of one or more than input and transforming process to make an output which is having a value to the customer. So if you still remember uh, when you learn about business process analysis, or when you learn about the IS analysis design, you already learn about the business process, whereby you will define what will be the input of the process, and then what is the transforming process, and what will be the output. I will give you an example of the process of in the selling of smartphone. In the first input, there is a request which is handled by the functional area marketing and sales. So there is a request to purchasing, and then that request will be notes into process that name a sales order, and as the output, the order, or we call the sales order document, will be generated. And then the next step, there is a financial help as a request, as an input. So it will address to functional area accounting and finance, whereby they will arrange for the financial payment, and as an output, the customer will pay through that smartphone company using some financial method. So this is sample of the business process, that sometimes it's not really necessary that you have to put in this table format. It's also possible if you just put in this flow chart. We will discuss about the business process more detail later when we do the uh, these analyzing about the process requirement. But I want you to try to take one of company example and just make a example drawing your own business process, so you can starting exercise to define the business process. And remember that this business process should be not only in one functional area or in one department, but I want you to draw the business process that more complex, that will be consist of many functional area. Okay, so if we look into the enterprise needs, the enterprise needs to make so the enterprise is actually having a resources, right? The resources here, we're talking about the material, we're talking about the money, we're talking about the information, about the human. But then the resources is very limited, so it means that the enterprise needs to make sure that the resource will be used effectively and efficiently. So but in or by having that effective and efficient, it means that they can give the value more to the customer, and the value also can be achieved if they can reduce the expense, or in this case the cost of let's say the production cost or delivery cost and so on. So the customer can enjoy more value, but we still the company still able to deduct the cost of running the company as well. But the thing is, as the business organization become larger, become complex, so the for each department they will need a different information. So we look if we look into the uh, functional area that previously I mentioned before, in each functional area, usually they have like they need like, let's say the marketing will need about the customer data, about the sales data, but for the warehouse they might need about the schedule, when the goods will come, when the goods needs to send out. So every department basically having a different information need, so it makes the business process become more complex, and it makes the enterprise need to make more planning. So when we talk about the planning here, it's not only talking about the planning in industrial system, which is usually we are only focusing on how to make sure that our business process is effective, how to make sure that our logistic is in schedule, how to make sure our demand can be calculated, the forecast demand can be calculated uh, accurately, or so on. So usually our focus is only in industrial system, which is the input is talking about the raw materials, and then there is a manufacturing things or production, and it will result as a finished goods. But now enterprise realize that the planning is also needed in the information system, whereby the input is not the raw materials, but the input is in form of raw data, and then it will be transformed during the business process execution to become an output or report. So if we look into this picture showing the management level and the type of information that required for each level. So if we see here, there are three levels from the operational. From the low level, it means responsible for transactional data, and that's why it's calling pre-specified, because usually the data is already specific for each department, will be specific, like the finance will handling the payment, the HR will handling the labor, accounting will handle the cost, operational will handling the goods movement, will handling the supplier and so on, and the marketing will handle the data of customer. So the data that used in the operational is usually already it's focused, and usually it's because it's transactional, so usually it can daily basis recording data. And if we go up into the management control, in the management level, the data need to be processed into information, because some of the data need to be combined, or some of data need to be summarized in order to have more information. So in the, if you see here, there is a difference in the decision requirement. So in the management level, the decision form is already in the semi-structured form. Meanwhile, in the operational, the decision is still in the structured form. The difference is in the structured decision, the decision that we need to make is more simple in a way that sometimes the decision is like a yes or no decision, like should we buy or should we produce, how much we need to buy. So it's pretty standard, and using the transactional data, then you can predict it. You can use the forecasting data to support your operational decision decision process. But meanwhile, in the management level, because the type of decision could be more complex, that's why it's called as a semi-structure, because the type of decision that needs to be done in the management level is more complex and need more data. That's why the data also needs to be integrated, and it's in the form of information instead of data only. So in the decision in the management level, usually uh, an example of the management level can be like which supplier that we should buy, uh, how about the agreement that we should do with the supplier, or what is the agreement that we should do with the customer. So if we're talking about that kind of decision, it's not only like uh, only number or yes or no question, but the things you need to consider some of the data. Let's say you need to consider the lead time, you need to consider the history data of the supplier, you need to consider our demand planning and so on. So that's why it's called, the decision is more complex and become a semi-structure. And then in the up level, we have the strategic planning, whereby the decision requirement is more unstructured, it's more complex, and in the company level, that's why it's say as a wide scope, because it's not anymore focused on the each department, but the focus is already the whole company. And the whole level. So the strategic planning usually will be consider like the from the vision mission, and then what is the strategy, what is the will be the tactic, and so on. So the strategic here will consider all the data taken from the operational and information taken from the management. All of this data will be used in the strategic level. So if we look into these things, we know that there's no single information system that can support the whole business needs in the organization. That because in every level of management will need different type of information, and even for each functional area will need a different information. So because of that needs, that's why nowadays we will find many functional silos in the organization. The functional silos here is shown in this picture. If you see here, for each department, for each functional area, they will have each data, whereby sometimes it can be redundant, it can be repeated, and it's not integrated one each other. So if you see here in the picture, you will see there is like many branch system that will be recording, but it's not linked. The data is not linked for one each other. Let's say example, when we talk about the sales data here, the sales data should be linked with the delivery and with the billing, but in fact if we see here, the sales in the inventory is recording differently, and the sales in the finance area also recording differently. It means it's possible that the sales data here could be different between each department. So how to manage to to make good information if we have a repeated or redundant data? So that's why when we talk about the information silos, the information silos is mean that the information is become independent and not integrated, as shown in the previous picture, whereby it sometimes it can make a bottlenecks or interfering the productivity, because the data is sometimes can be wrong, or the data can be not complete, or the data can be duplicated. That's why it makes the process cannot be flowing properly. So what we need is actually we need to have an integration system whereby the data, all the application, all the resources across of the organization should be integrated into one system, so the company can have the overview data from the whole company. So the data is not only silo, the data is not only come from small department, but the strategic level can see the whole data across the whole company, and it makes the company become agile, become flexible when they want to make some decision. So the integration system also will help the enterprise to make the organization can have the business process effectively, uh, which mean the organization can be customer focused, because the process already effective, the process already efficient, so they can handle what customer needs more effective also, and it will increase the customer satisfaction. So uh, looking into that background of needs in the company, that's why the ERP is appear. But actually the ERP is not uh, suddenly appear. So there are evaluation phase of the ERP. So the first ERP, or so previously we only call it as a reorder point system. In the year of 1960s, so there was a system what we call with the reorder point system, whereby the system is only focused on controlling about the inventory. So the system is only make sure that the inventory should not be empty, but then the inventory also should not be more than the warehouse capacity. So that is only handling by the reordering point system. And then in the 1970s, the system evolving become more complex, what we call with the materials requirement planning. In here, the system already combine between the inventory and the manufacturing, as well as the procurement. So the MRP is actually planning to see how much the demand from the customer, and then so how much the company need to produce, and how much the raw material needs to be bought from the supplier. And then that MRP also evolving into MRP2, whereby the MRP is not only planning about the quantity of the product, but then it will add it with the capacity planning. It's mean we're talking about how many machine we have, how many labor do we have now. So uh, what is the scheduling of our manufacturing to ensure that our demand can be fulfilled. And then in the 1990s, the MRP2 is combined into the manufacturing execution system, whereby the MRP become more detailed, not only in terms of the capacity planning, it means in the high level, but also in the shop floor level, which is in the operational level. So the MRP now is not only from the strategic level, but could be in the uh, monitoring, and also in the in the management, and also in the operational level. But then late of 1990s, the ERP concept is appear because the enterprise realized that uh, inside the company, the resources we are talking about is not only inventory or labor or machine, but the enterprise also have another resources like money, like asset, like information, of course. So that's why the ERP is a new concept, whereby the uh, the planning should be done not only for the logistic side, but for the whole enterprise functional area. So that's why the key of the ERP here, the key purpose is how to integrate it, the manufacturing and the other department in the inside the company. Because previously in reorder point we only talking about the inventory, and then in MRP the inventory combined with the manufacturing and procuring, and then in the ERP the whole functional area is integrated into one system, into one planning. Okay, so this is the roadmap of the evolution of ERP, and then with the platform that appear. This is just for your information that you can read again later. So the ERP is a planning methodology. So the first thing when ERP created, ERP is a planning methodology. So previously, so the main concept here is about the planning, how to integrate all the information across the company, across the organization, to make sure that the data can be accurate, and it can be flow from one department to another department in order to maximize the usage of the resources. Okay, but then the ERP is become a system, because of course we will need an IT to support this planning. So that's why nowadays when we talk about the ERP, we talk about ERP is a system, but previously is ERP is meant to build as a planning methodology. But now, because we cannot separate between the planning methodology with the IT, that's why when we talk about the ERP, now we are talking about the information system that help the organization to integrate it all the data across the functional organization. So the goal of ERP is to make sure the data is integrated and can be flowing from one department to another department immediately. It means that usually the data needs to be copied from one department and moved to another department, copy and paste. But now we make sure that the data is actually already integrated. It means that once the data uh, input into the system from one department, then another department also can access that data, even though later on we need to arrange who can access specific data. So the ERP key points will have the integrated information. Of course, the first main is the information should be integrated, and then accurate and real time. Uh, Accurate here can be achieved because the data is actually integrated. So once, let's say, once the sales department saying that the sales come from the customer is 100 pieces, so the delivery person in the warehouse also will see 100 pieces. Previously, if the data is not integrated, it's possible that the sales marketing input the order is 100 pieces, but then possibly there is a mistake when the data move into the warehouse, so the warehouse only get an order only to deliver, let's say, 90 pieces. And then again, when the data move to the finance only get the data, let's say, 95 pieces. So it means the data become not accurate because possibly mistake happen when the data move into one department to another department. But by having the ERP, because the data is integrated, so once it's input as 100 pieces, so the other department related will also see only 100 pieces, and the data cannot be added by non accessible party. So let's say if we're talking about the customer order here, it's only can be input by the salesperson 100 pieces, but then the warehouse only can view the data but cannot edit the data. So that's why the data become accurate and also real time, because by the time the salesperson input the data, so the delivery person, the delivery actor in the warehouse also will see there is 100 pieces needs to be delivered. And then the next ERP key points also, we're talking about the segregation of duty. So even though the information is integrated, but doesn't mean that the whole person in the organization can look into the data, because the data still actually belong to each department. So as my example before, like the customer order maybe can be seen by the warehouse and the finance, but like a supplier, uh, because supplier is related to the purchasing department, so it's not necessary that the sales department will have an access to see who is the supplier. So in the ERP, we will make sure that the each functional department can access to particular data which is really related to their work, which is related to their responsible. And the last point of the key of the ERP is actually ERP enable a company to have a good audit trail. The audit trail here means that the company will able to see the historical of the data. So when the example here is when the order placed, when the order will need to be delivered, need to be invoiced, and so on. So all the history will be uh, put into one audit trail, and it cannot be changed. And so we know about the status, what is the current status, and then we know also about what is the history between behind this document. So now if we look into the picture, the ERP is actually will help the company to manage the data from different level of management. Even though the focus of ERP is actually to do the transaction processing, or sometimes we call with the OLTP, online transaction processing. So the ERP here is focusing on how to manage the data and transaction across of functional area inside the enterprise here. And later on, the ERP will be fundamental data. So when the managerial level or the strategic level want to do some analytical data, then it can be moved into the OLAP, or online analytical processing. So online analytical processing here is actually related with the managerial level and the strategic level. And also if we have the specific industrial, let's say our company is selling a car, so usually the business process will be different when we produce a car and when we produce a burger, right? That's why there will be in some bolt-on application, whereby this application can help the industry to adjust some business process regarding their manufacturing things. regarding to the product characteristic. Okay, so basically what I want to tell you is the ERP will help in the transactional and even and also half of the managerial, because in the ERP we also can produce not only the transactional data, not only transforming the transactional data, but also we'll have a summary, and the summary can be used as information in the managerial level. So inside of the ERP there will be some module, and this module is actually will be related to the functional area in the company. uh, there will be the finance, which is finance will be related to the transaction of account payable, to notes the transaction with the supplier, and then we'll handle the account receivable as well, whereby the AR here will be linked into the customer. So if you see here, there is the functional of marketing and sales, there is a procurement, there is manufacturing, and also logistics and so on. So I will not go through this module one by one, because later on during our topic next semester, in this semester, I will explain for each module. Okay, but I wonder if you ever heard about this module before, or have you ever heard about the process behind this module? So maybe you can think about it, and let me know which module that you are interested on. Okay, and then inside of the ERP system there will be a several components. There will be a hardware as a infrastructure. It means that there will be a server and another peripherals like a printer, like the PC and so on, and another machine that maybe need to be linked into the ERP, so it will include in the hardware. And then there will be a software process, uh, which is that is the operating system and the database. And then of course there will be information. You need to define what kind of data, what needed uh, from the internal and also from the external. Let's say like the currency, it means will be taken from the external resource. And let's say we want to know about the supplier capability, supplier lead time, it means it will taken from the external source. And there is a process as well, whereby you need to define what is the business process, what is the procedure, the policy, and so on. And this will be the fundamental of the ERP as well, because it's not possible, it will be possible to define a ERP without having a proper business process. So that's why later on we will start from defining the business process first before we can go into implementing an ERP. And of course we also have the people as as ERP component, whereby the people here will consist of end user, the one who will input the data into the system, and the IT staff, where which is having a responsible to support the end user. So this is an example of architecture of ERP in one of the enterprise. You will see there will be ERP software, there will be a server, there will be a database, and then there will be the laptop as or PC, and then there will be a network. So we're talking about LAN or WAN, and then there will be a business process, and there will be the workstation here, means the location of the user, and maybe the user as well. Okay, so the ERP benefits, in terms of tangible things, the information response become faster, of course. Example here, if you see here, the response to customer billing uh, become faster. Yeah, this is what happened in the Johnson and Johnson. So previously, to produce a billing needs 15 to 20 minutes, but now it's become lesser than that. It's become fast, become real time. So by the time the customer order, then the billing also can be generated faster. Of course, if the billing can generate it faster, it means the customer also expected to pay faster. And then there is increasing in interaction between the functional department. In example here, there is a simplification process at the Boeing, and then there is growth in the interfacility coordination in Owens. It means the from the data is because the data can easily flow from one department to another department. It makes the interaction between the company also become higher. And then there is improvement in order management, there is improvement in order taking notes. Example, there is 90% reduction in cycle time for quotation. So the cycle time here is talking about the end-to-end process. Let's say previously, from the customer order until the customer payment needed about 1 month, but now it's only needed about 2 days. So if you see here, there is a reduction from 20 days become only 2 days, uh, from start the customer order until the customer payment. And then because the order management also improving, so there will be the decreasing of financial closing cycle. It means the financial cycle can be closed soon. Previously we need to wait until 20 days before the payment can be closed, now can be in 2 days time. So it means the financial things can be closed faster. And then there's improving in interaction with the customer as well, because we know the history of we know the status of our process, so we can give the information to the customer, and it makes the customer happy with our explanation. And it's also possible to improve our delivery, become on time, because now we know that uh, the we already cut the process of manual transforming data from the sales to the delivery, so it can increase the delivery time. And then it can reduce the operating costs as well, because it helps the because the ERP can help to make a good planning, a good capacity planning, a good lead time calculation, and so on. So it may cause the direct operating costs, and the inventory level also will be decreased. So this is the tangible benefit of the ERP. Whereby if we're talking about the intangible things, the things that we cannot really see, is that it's there is a feasibility in the information, whereby now we can easily access, we can easily extract the data from the system, and then the process also become faster, the customer becomes satisfied, and then there is a flexibility. Let's say if we want to make a new product, so we can easily decide whether the product is will be successful or not, because we have enough data uh, to be calculated in our forecasting things. Okay, so and then when we want to choose the ERP system, there are several selection criteria that we can choose based on the functionality. It's mean based on the whether the module is complete or not in a system, and then of course we need to check whether the system is easy to use by the user. It's mean we need to know also what is our user characteristic, so whether the user is feasible to use the new ERP system or not. And then we're talking about the total cost of ownership of the ERP system. Later on I will show you the total cost that we want if we want to implement an ERP system. And usually the ERP system implementation cost is quite high. That's why it needs to be one of the most important criteria in choosing what is our ERP system that we want to use. And then must be an integrated suite. It means that whether it's possible that ERP can be linked into another party system. Let's say whether the ERP can be linked into the financial from other bank, or can be integrated to the courier, third party logistic, and so on. And then we need to think about the ease and speed of the implementation, whether it will take a long time or only able to be in the short time. And then we need to consider also about the tailoring or customize the functionality without programming. So if it's possible that when we use the ERP system, we're not doing the changing by we're not doing the functionality changing by changing the coding directly, because it might be troublesome. So that's why we need to consider whether uh, the ERP system can give us ability to do a flexible configuration. And then we also need to consider about the global capabilities. It's mean whether the ERP system is it used by many company across the global, or the ERP is only a small system, because usually the more global the ERP system can be used, it's mean the integration between one company and another company can be achieved easier. So that's why one of the consideration is about the global capabilities, because it enable one company to be integrated in the same system. And then we need to consider also our relationship with the vendor, with the ERP system vendor, whereby the vendor is reputable or not, and then what is the history, and whether they want easy to be approached, easy to give the uh, support or not. Okay, so next on I want you to list down all the ERP system that is in the market now. um, Basically there will be two kind of ERP system that exist. The first one that you need to pay, and the other one is the open source. So the open source is actually uh, all the all the code is actually not belong to one company, so that's why there is no cost of buying the software, because that's why it's called as an open source. So you can find out what is the ERP that you need to pay and what is the software that is open source. And then there is ERP implementation selection alternatives here. The first option is actually the last one, is when you do nothing. Okay, that's why it's called as a status quo, whereby you don't do anything. It means you will not do any ERP implementation. The cost is nothing, but it's mean you will get nothing also. There will be a no business process change, there is a no disruption, there is no in your current operation. It means everything will go as normal, but it means that you will have any advantage also. It means that your information also still in silo position, and this is, it means that you cannot uh, achieve more opportunity. And then we have the in-house development. Okay, and we will have the partial ERP implementation, and this is the vanilla ERP implementation which is normally done. So so the analogy of ERP implementation here is like when you want to buy a clothes. When you want to have a clothes, you can choose whether you want to buy directly in the mall, or you want to go to the tailor to make it, right? The thing is, if you have a standard requirement, let's say that you only need this, uh, you don't need so specific requirement, you can just go to the mall and then you just choose which clothes is suitable to you, and then you wear it, right? So that's what we talk about the vanilla ERP implementation. And usually the cost and time will be around this amount. Okay, the advantage is you will have the complete standard of business process that usually we call as a best practice. So it means the vendor of the ERP system already make sure that you will have a standard business process. So you just follow the business process that provided by the ERP system, then it make your business process become efficient and effective. Okay, but then it's possible that the disadvantage is because the competitor will also possible to have the same system. It's mean that possibly that your strategy can be the same. Yeah, because whatever configure in the ERP system is copied, is used uh, in your company and also in the competitor. So it's mean usually the same feature and the same information also uh, the same. That's why maybe you need to make some changes for the ERP system in order to make uh, more specific to your needs. So that's what we call with the partial ERP implementation. So the analogy is when after you buy the clothes from the mall, and then you went home and you do uh, some changes in the clothes, because you need this to be more, maybe this part need to be specific, maybe the you need some particular needs that you need to adjust to the clothes. That's what we call it with the partial ERP implementation, whereby the business process can be changed partially. It's mean because you're not really following the business process provided by the ERP system you buy. So half process still following your process, and then half process will following the ERP system. Okay, and it might be sometimes troublesome also, because it means you need to make some arrangement between the ERP system and your business process things, that sometimes it might be there is different different needs, or maybe sometimes there will be uh, because it's not really integrated anymore, so possibility the accuracy also can be compromised. And the in-house development is actually talking about if when we want to, instead of buying the clothes from the mall, then you go to the tailor and you draw your own design of clothes, and you ask the tailor to make as what you need. The good thing is you will have a very custom design. It's mean it's very unique, because it's only designed for you. But the things is sometimes because uh, when we build our own business process, sometimes uh, sometimes the business process cannot really become effectively, because we still hang on the old business process, we still hang on the old habit, old procedures, because sometimes it's not easy to change. So that's why we still resistant on the current business process, and it makes that if the business process not effective, it means our ERP system also become not effective. So it will it will be lesser the advantage of having a ERP system, because there are not many changes in our old business process. But of course, all of this implementation will have advantages and disadvantage, and it will be depend on how the company strategy, how is the company uh, comfortability to implement an ERP system. So maybe when you learn about IS analysis and design, when you learn about the feasibility analysis, whether the user can use the ERP system, the new ERP system or not, so that will be one of the consideration when you want to choose the implementation of ERP. Okay, so what we uh, going to do later is actually we will use on the uh, uh, ERP vanilla ERP implementation. We call it as a vanilla because it's a normal ERP implementation that we are going to do. So we just will choose the one of open source ERP system that exists now, and then we will customize that ERP software to be uh, to be acceptable, or to be fit with the business process of your own case study. We will discuss later on the discussion about the project for this ERP implementation. And then in here we will have the ERP implementation approach, whether you want to choose the re-engineering approach or you want to use the customizing approach. So in the re-engineering approach, actually we're trying to fit our business process company to be fit in the software business process. So example, if currently our business process is A, B, C, D, E, there are 5 A, B, C, D, E, but then in the software business process they only have A, B, D, they only have 3 business process. It's mean in the re-engineering approach we will fit our business process previously A, B, C, D, E, then we just delete this, or maybe we can merge the process in order to make it fit with the ERP system business process. Okay, so it's mean in the re-engineering approach things all the things in the organization will be changed in order to make it same with what already designed in the ERP system before. So but in the customizing approach is actually uh, we're trying to customize, we're trying to uh, change the ERP system. So if let's say my example is the ERP system is only having ABD, so now we're trying to change the ERP system also will have ABCDE. That's the difference. So in the re-engineering, the focus is organization will be changed, but in the customizing, the focus is the ERP system need to change to the organization. Okay, so we will discuss this later. Which one is suitable for a company, because it will be for each company, for even for each business process can be different. Sometimes it can be mixed. Sometimes it's possible for, let's say for the sales, we will following the re-engineering approach, but for the manufacturing, because it's very specific towards the company business process, so we cannot just use the ERP system business process. So that's why we need to do the customing approach. It means the ERP system needs to be modified based on the company needs. Okay, so this is the ERP cost analysis example. So usually for the ERP vanilla implementation, there will be a software where you need to buy, and then you need to pay for the license. So for each year usually you need to pay for the license, and then in the beginning you need to buy this hardware, you need to pay the consulting, the analyst and so on, you need to do the training and blah blah blah. And meanwhile, when we use the ERP open source, we don't need to pay the software and we don't need to pay any license. If we want to use the standard if we want to use the standard module, usually we don't need to pay anything, so we just need to provide the hardware, the consultation and so on. Okay, this is the cost, the total cost that predicted when we want to implement ERP. This is not in IDR, yeah, but this is in USD, US dollar. And this is the benefit that trying to be put into amount. So let's say the reduced inventory cost, how much it can be reduced, and how much it can be reduced for the administrative costs and so on. So it can so from the tangible and the intangible benefit, then it will trying to be calculated into certain amount in here. So later on we will know whether is it feasible, is it worth it to do the ERP implementation or not. So if you see here, in the first year we only need to pay 620. Meanwhile, we already saving a cost of this one is 3 million, 4 million, and 4 million, and even we can, so if you see here there are 4 million saving. So it's mean it's really worth it to implement the ERP, even though at the beginning we need to spend a lot, but actually during the first year we already can saving a lot of amount as well. Okay, so that's the topic for today. Let's have a discussion to know what is your doubt. Thank you.